Most people over 60 who are losing strength in their legs are doing everything they have been told to do. They are walking, they are eating fruit, they are staying active. And yet the weakness continues, slowly, quietly, in a way that is easy to blame on age and nothing else. But here is what the research is beginning to show. Certain fruits that are widely considered healthy are, in specific biological contexts, actively working against the very muscle tissue you are trying to preserve. Not because fruit is bad, but because after 60, the body processes certain natural compounds very differently than it did at 40. And that difference has consequences most people never see coming. Early diagnosis: what is actually happening inside the aging muscle. To understand why certain fruits become problematic for leg strength after 60, we first need to understand what is happening inside aging muscle tissue. After the age of approximately 50, the body enters an accelerated phase of a process called sarcopenia, the gradual, progressive loss of skeletal muscle mass and function. This is not simply about using muscles less. It is a biological shift driven by declining anabolic hormone levels, reduced protein synthesis efficiency, increased systemic inflammation, and changes in how mitochondria, the energy-producing structures inside muscle cells, generate and sustain power. The muscle fibers most affected are type 2 fast-twitch fibers, the ones responsible for strength, stability, and the kind of explosive power needed to stand from a chair, climb stairs, or catch yourself if you begin to fall. These fibers are preferentially lost during sarcopenia, and they are also the hardest to rebuild once gone. The legs, being the largest muscle group in the body, show this loss most visibly and most functionally. Weakness in the quadriceps, hamstrings, and calf muscles is often the first place sarcopenia makes itself known in daily life. Now here is where nutrition enters this picture in a way that is more nuanced than most dietary advice acknowledges. The damage phase: how certain fruits accelerate the problem. Muscle preservation after 60 depends on several tightly connected biological processes. Protein synthesis must remain active. Insulin sensitivity must stay functional so that glucose enters muscle cells efficiently as fuel. Inflammation must be kept at a low baseline because chronic low-grade inflammation, which researchers now call inflammaging, directly accelerates the breakdown of muscle protein. And mitochondrial function must be supported because aging mitochondria and muscle cells produce less energy and generate more oxidative stress. Certain fruits, when consumed regularly and in the quantities many health-conscious older adults actually consume them, interfere with one or more of these processes. The mechanisms vary by fruit. Some are very high in fructose, which when consumed in excess drives hepatic fat accumulation, worsens insulin resistance, and reduces the efficiency of glucose uptake in muscle tissue. Others contain compounds that spike blood sugar rapidly, creating the kind of glycemic variability that promotes systemic inflammation, the same inflammation that accelerates muscle protein breakdown. Others interact with medications commonly taken after 60 in ways that affect nutrient absorption, hormone balance, or cellular energy production. The result in each case is the same. The muscle does not receive the metabolic environment it needs to maintain and rebuild itself. Strength declines faster than it should. Recovery from exercise takes longer. And the person continues eating what they believe is healthy, because nobody told them that after 60, the metabolic rules quietly changed. But why does age specifically change how the body responds to these fruits? And which ones are we actually talking about? That is precisely what comes next. What makes this particularly important after 60? The liver's ability to process fructose efficiently declines with age. Gut microbiome diversity, which influences how fruit compounds are metabolized and whether they produce beneficial or inflammatory byproducts, also shifts significantly after 60. Pancreatic beta cell responsiveness becomes less precise, meaning blood sugar spikes from high glycemic fruits are sharper and more prolonged in an older adult than in a younger one eating the exact same thing. And because lean muscle mass is already declining, there is less tissue available to buffer those glucose fluctuations, which means the metabolic damage from repeated spikes accumulates more quickly. This is not a reason to stop eating fruit. Fruit contains fiber, antioxidants, polyphenols, and vitamins that are genuinely important for healthy aging. But it is a reason to be selective. Because when the goal is specifically to preserve and strengthen leg muscles after 60, some fruits support that goal and some quietly undermine it. And most people have never been given the tools to tell the difference. So which 7 fruits are we talking about? And more importantly, what should replace them? The ranked list I'm about to share is not about fear or restriction. It is about precision. Each of the 7 fruits has a specific biological reason it creates friction with aging muscle metabolism. And for each one, there is a smarter alternative that delivers the same nutritional value without the metabolic cost. Understanding the why behind each one is what turns this from a list into a tool you can actually use. So, what can actually help someone over 60 build and maintain stronger legs through smarter fruit choices without sacrificing the nutritional benefits that fruit genuinely provides? The answer requires looking at each problematic fruit individually, understanding the specific mechanism that makes it counterproductive for aging muscle, and then replacing it with a targeted alternative that works with your biology rather than against it. This is not about eating less. It is about eating with more precision at a stage of life where precision genuinely matters. The 7 fruits ranked from least to most impactful on leg muscle decline. Number 7, fruit juice of any kind. Before we reach whole fruits, this one deserves its own position because it is the single most common way older adults unknowingly flood their system with fructose and rapidly absorbable sugar. When fruit is juiced, the fiber matrix that normally slows glucose absorption is destroyed. What remains is essentially liquid sugar, even in 100% natural, no added sugar versions. A single glass of orange juice contains the sugar equivalent of 3 to 4 whole oranges absorbed in minutes rather than hours. In an aging gut with reduced microbiome diversity and a pancreas that is already less precise in its insulin response, this creates a sharp glycemic spike followed by an equally sharp drop. That glucose roller coaster promotes cortisol release, increases systemic inflammation, and, critically, suppresses anabolic signaling in muscle tissue during the recovery window after exercise. For someone trying to rebuild leg strength, this is the worst metabolic environment to create, and it is happening in the first hour of the morning for millions of older adults who believe they are starting the day healthfully. The smarter alternative is simply eating the whole fruit with its fiber intact, or replacing the juice habit with water infused with lemon and a small amount of fresh ginger, which supports gut motility without the glycemic impact. Number 6, watermelon in large portions. Watermelon is genuinely hydrating, genuinely rich in lycopene, and genuinely beneficial in moderate amounts. But it carries one of the highest glycemic index scores of any whole fruit, sitting between 72 and 80 depending on ripeness. Glycemic index measures how rapidly a food raises blood glucose relative to pure glucose itself. For aging muscle metabolism, the concern is not watermelon eaten occasionally or in small portions. The concern is the common habit of consuming large bowls of it as a primary snack or meal component throughout summer months. The rapid glucose spike it produces, particularly when eaten alone without protein or fat to slow absorption, creates the same inflammatory cycle that undermines muscle protein synthesis. It also contributes to triglyceride elevation in older adults with early metabolic syndrome, a condition that is far more prevalent after 60 than most people realize. The smarter alternative for hydration and antioxidant benefit is cucumber combined with a small serving of berries, both of which deliver significantly lower glycemic impact with comparable hydration and superior polyphenol content. But here is what most people miss about glycemic index in aging. The number itself is only part of the picture. Glycemic load, which accounts for portion size, is what actually matters in daily practice. A small piece of watermelon has a modest glycemic load. The problem is almost nobody eats a small piece. Number 5, canned fruit in syrup. This one is straightforward but consistently overlooked. Canned peaches, pears, mandarin segments, and fruit cocktail are staple pantry items for many older adults, convenient, affordable, and perceived as equivalent to fresh fruit. They are not. The syrup used in standard canning adds significant quantities of refined sugar, often 15 to 25 grams per serving, directly to fruit that already contains natural fructose. The heat processing also degrades heat-sensitive vitamins and partially breaks down fiber structure, accelerating glucose absorption. Regular consumption of canned fruit in syrup contributes to the kind of persistent insulin elevation that over time drives insulin resistance in skeletal muscle, meaning the muscle becomes progressively less efficient at absorbing glucose as fuel. Less fuel efficiency in muscle equals faster fatigue, slower recovery, and reduced capacity to respond to strength training. If fresh fruit is not accessible, the correct alternative is canned fruit packed in water or its own juice, rinsed before eating to remove residual sugar, or frozen fruit, which retains nutritional integrity far better than syrup-packed canned versions. Number 4, grapes in excess. Grapes are among the most frequently consumed fruits globally, and they contain resveratrol, a polyphenol with genuine research support for cardiovascular and metabolic health. This makes the nuance here important. The problem with grapes for aging leg muscle is not their polyphenol content. It is their sugar density combined with their ease of overconsumption. Grapes contain between 15 and 23 grams of sugar per 100 grams depending on variety. And because they are small, sweet, and require no preparation, it is physiologically very easy to consume 300 to 400 grams in a single sitting without registering it as a significant sugar intake. That quantity delivers 45 to 90 grams of sugar in one sitting, a load that overwhelms the aging liver's fructose processing capacity and significantly elevates blood triglycerides within hours. Elevated triglycerides in the context of aging muscle are not just a cardiovascular concern. Research has linked hypertriglyceridemia to impaired mitochondrial function in skeletal muscle, specifically reduced capacity for fatty acid oxidation, which is one of the primary fuel pathways muscles rely on during sustained activity like walking, climbing stairs, and standing. Weakened mitochondrial function in leg muscles means faster fatigue and reduced endurance independent of muscle mass itself. The smarter alternative for those who enjoy grapes is a measured small portion, roughly 15 to 20 grapes, eaten alongside a protein source, which blunts the glycemic and triglyceride response significantly. And here's what most people miss entirely. Red and purple grapes contain more resveratrol and anthocyanins than green grapes, meaning if you are going to eat grapes, the darker varieties deliver meaningfully more benefit per gram of sugar consumed. Number 3. Overripe bananas. Bananas are one of the most nutrient-dense fruits available, rich in potassium, vitamin B6, magnesium, and resistant starch when consumed at the right ripeness. That last point is the critical detail most people never consider. A firm, slightly underripe banana with visible green at the tips contains a significant proportion of its carbohydrate content as resistant starch, a type of fiber that bypasses digestion, feeds beneficial gut bacteria, and has a minimal glycemic impact. As a banana ripens and the skin develops brown spots, the resistant starch converts almost entirely into free sugars, primarily glucose and fructose, that absorb rapidly and spike blood glucose sharply. For an older adult eating overripe bananas daily, which many do, either from preference or to reduce food waste, this represents a consistent, repeated glycemic stressor that works directly against the insulin sensitivity that aging muscle depends on. The potassium and magnesium in bananas are genuinely valuable for muscle contraction and electrolyte balance, especially in the legs, where cramping is a common complaint after 60. The solution is not to eliminate bananas. It is to consume them at the firm, lightly yellow stage and pair them with a tablespoon of almond butter or a small serving of Greek yogurt to slow glucose absorption. Number 2, dried fruit of all varieties. Raisins, dates, dried apricots, dried mango, dried cranberries. These are concentrated sugar delivery systems dressed in a health food identity. The dehydration process that creates dried fruit removes water, but preserves and in fact concentrates every gram of sugar that was present in the whole fruit. A single cup of raisins contains more sugar than a can of soda. Dried mango, dried pineapple, and yogurt-covered raisins, marketed as health snacks, are among the most glycemically aggressive foods an older adult can consume regularly. The fiber remains, which provides some degree of absorption slowing, but not enough to offset the sheer sugar density when consumed in typical snack-sized portions. For aging muscles specifically, the chronic insulin elevation driven by regular dried fruit consumption suppresses growth hormone pulsatility. Growth hormone, even at the lower levels naturally present after 60, plays a meaningful role in maintaining lean muscle mass and supporting fat metabolism. Chronically elevated insulin blunts growth hormone release, creating a hormonal environment that accelerates the very sarcopenia the person is trying to prevent. Replacing dried fruit snacks with a combination of fresh berries and a protein-containing food, cottage cheese, a small handful of walnuts, or a boiled egg, delivers comparable satisfaction with a fraction of the glycemic and hormonal cost. But here's what most people miss about dried fruit. Many commercial varieties also contain added sugar and sulfite preservatives, making the sugar content even higher than the natural fruit would produce alone. Always read the label, even on products that appear to be pure and natural. Number 1, tropical fruits in high frequency, mango, pineapple, and lychee. Of all the fruits that work against leg strength after 60, this category has the most significant cumulative impact and the strongest research basis for concern in aging muscle metabolism. Mangoes, pineapples, and lychees are among the highest sugar whole fruits available, with glycemic indices ranging from 51 to 73 and natural sugar contents between 13 and 17 grams per 100 grams. More importantly, they are frequently consumed in large portions. Mango smoothies, pineapple chunks as a regular snack, or lychee eaten by the dozen. in a way that delivers a substantial fructose load repeatedly across the week. The specific concern for leg muscle here is the interaction between high fructose intake, hepatic fat accumulation, and intramuscular fat infiltration. Research from exercise physiology and metabolic medicine has consistently shown that diets high in fructose accelerate a process called myosteatosis, the infiltration of fat deposits into muscle tissue. Unlike subcutaneous fat that sits under the skin, intramuscular fat sits within and between muscle fibers, physically disrupting the architecture of the muscle and reducing its capacity to generate force. In the quadriceps and calf muscles of older adults, myosteatosis is directly associated with reduced walking speed, impaired balance, and increased fall risk. This is not a theoretical connection. It is a measurable structural change visible on MRI imaging, and it progresses faster in individuals with high fructose intake and insulin resistance. Replacing high-frequency tropical fruit consumption with lower fructose alternatives, specifically berries, which are among the most muscle-supportive fruits available due to their anthocyanin content, low glycemic impact, and anti-inflammatory properties, addresses both the sugar load problem and actively supports the cellular environment that aging muscle needs to repair and strengthen. If you are over 60 and experiencing progressive leg weakness, unusual fatigue during activities that used to feel manageable, increased calf cramping, or slower recovery after walking or exercise, these are nonspecific symptoms with many possible causes. They are not exclusively dietary in origin. Thyroid function, vitamin D status, B12 levels, circulation, and medication side effects are all clinical considerations that deserve evaluation. Please do not self-diagnose based on dietary patterns alone. These symptoms warrant a conversation with your physician, ideally including basic blood work, before attributing them to any single cause. Adjusting fruit consumption is one component of a multi-layered approach to preserving leg strength after 60. It is not a standalone solution. Resistance exercise, specifically progressive loading of the leg muscles 2 to 3 times per week, remains the most evidence-backed intervention for sarcopenia. Adequate protein intake, with research increasingly supporting higher targets for older adults of 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight daily, is equally foundational. Vitamin D and magnesium status, both of which influence muscle contraction and protein synthesis, are frequently deficient in adults over 60 and worth checking. Dietary changes around fruit will support these interventions, but they will not replace them. Results vary significantly based on baseline health, existing muscle mass, medications, and consistency of effort. Meaningful changes in strength and function typically require sustained effort over 3 to 6 months minimum. Here is the one practical step I want you to take this week. Look at what you eat for breakfast and your mid-morning snack, the 2 meals where fruit consumption is most habitual and most likely to be high in the categories we discussed today. Ask yourself whether juice, dried fruit, overripe bananas, or large portions of tropical fruit are a regular feature of that window. If they are, make one substitution. Replace one of those items with a handful of blueberries or raspberries alongside a protein source, Greek yogurt, eggs, or cottage cheese. That single change, made consistently, shifts the metabolic environment of your morning in a direction that supports rather than undermines the muscle tissue you are working to protect. Strong legs after 60 are not an accident. They are the result of deliberate, informed choices made consistently over time. You now have a more precise understanding of one part of that picture than most people ever receive. Use it. And if you have not had a full metabolic panel and muscle function assessment with your doctor recently, make that appointment. Your legs will carry you for decades more if you give them the right environment to do so.